Greetings, YouTube! The Doctor is in. Dr. Urias Papers here, coming at you with another commentary on Dungeons and Dragons. And today we are going to be doing another video in our Weapon Mastery series. We are going to be talking about the D&D 2024 Push Weapon Mastery. We're going to be grading it. We're going to be talking about all the weapons that have this particular weapon mastery. We're going to be talking about the best feats to use with it, and we're going to be talking about the best classes to use with it. So, lots to talk about, lots to go over. Stay tuned, and don't go away. All right, before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a question or a comment. Don't forget to share this video, and don't forget to hit that notification bell. And I want to give a shout out to myself, of course. Here are two great adventures that I have written. One is called The Vault of the Worm. The other is The Painted Rock. They are both available in Dungeon Masters Guild. And the link is below for you to find these. So go to Dungeon Masters Guild and check them out. Vault of the Worm is made for 3rd level characters, and The Painted Rock is made for 4th level characters. And I have many more that I am working on that will be coming out soon. So Dungeon Masters Guild, links below. All right, let's start with what is push. Push says, if you hit a creature with this weapon, you can push the creature up to 10 feet straight away from yourself if it is large or smaller. So huge creatures, no. Gargantuan creatures, no. So, giants, most giants are huge. You're not going to be doing this. But note, this says if you hit a creature with this weapon, you can push it up to 10 feet straight away from yourself. And it doesn't say once per turn. It says if you hit. So that means you could hit a creature with a weapon that has push. You could move 10 feet, and we're going to see that there is a weapon that doesn't require moving. You could move 10 feet right up to them and do it all again if you have a second attack. So, why do I like forced movement? You all know that I like forced movement. Forced movement pushes things into dangerous situations like all of those great area of effect spells that we have that are ongoing, things like Spirit Guardians, walls of fire, all that stuff, lava pools, pits, cliff edges, all of that stuff. You can push them right off. Roofs of buildings. I've done this many, many times with a couple of different characters. I love forced movement. So you should also love force movement. Now, because this is a force movement that can happen more than once in a turn, we are going to give this a flat out A. Force movement can be so devastating, especially if you're going to push a creature off of a roof or off of a cliff, even if it's a little bit and they don't have fly or they can't really climb very well, then they're basically out of the combat. And then pushing them into all of these wonderful area effect spells where it says at the beginning of the turn or when the creature goes in, then it takes la effect. That is massive. So let's talk about what weapons have the push mastery. All right, here we have the list of weapons, and there are 4 weapons essentially. It's not a lot, but there are some that are better than others, and we're going to talk about that. The first weapon we've got here is Great Club, D8 bludgeoning damage. Now, there's one thing that goes with that that's very important. We're going to talk about that when we get to feats. It's two-handed, and it has the push mastery. So you have to be able to have access to weapon masteries in the first place to get this one. And then it is the only one. There's 2 of these out of the weapons that we're going to use that have the push mastery and are bludgeoning, which is important for a couple of different feats. So we've got Great Club. That is one which has push, and two-handed. So two-handed is not it's a property that forces you to do a thing but doesn't give you anything in return. It takes things away. So I prefer some of the weapons that have like two-handed and then are like heavy, things like that, or reach, which we're going to talk about one. Now, the other one that we have, and this is a simple melee weapon. So there are no other simple melee weapons that have push. Great Club is the only one. Now, the next weapon we're going to talk about is the pike. And here is the pike right here. It does a D10 piercing damage. It has heavy, it has reach, and it is two-handed, and it has push. So, many things to unpack with this. It's not just two-handed, which is one of those kind of negative properties. It has reach and heavy, which means there are a number of other things that can be used with this that require the heavy. And so heavy just says you have disadvantage on attack rolls with a heavy weapon if it's a melee weapon and your strength score isn't at least 13, or if it's a ranged weapon, your dex isn't at least 13. So, it is what it is. You probably shouldn't be picking up a pike if your strength is not 15. And then it's got reach, which means it adds 5 feet to the attack range when determining your reach for things like opportunity attacks and what you can hit. And then it's two-handed again, which is you have to have two hands. And then it's got push, so every time you hit, you can push something 10 feet. And because you have reach, now you probably could hit it from reach. So that is a thing, but you probably will end up having to move if you've got multiple attacks. All right, the next weapon on our list is Warhammer. Warhammer is one-handed. It has push. It does bludgeoning damage. It does a D8 bludgeoning damage, and it is versatile, meaning if we put two hands on it, it goes to a D10. The only difference between this and pike, obviously, is this one's not heavy. This one doesn't have reach. It can be two-handed, but the big one is it does bludgeoning damage, and we're going to talk about bludgeoning damage and what that means. It's got push, so every time you hit, 10 feet of movement. So, and we've got one other weapon here, and that is the heavy crossbow, which is a martial ranged weapon. It has ammunition, which means you have to have ammunition, and there's a range there. It is 100 feet, which is great. It is heavy, so we do have to have a dex of 13 to use this. It has the loading property, which means you can only fire one piece of ammunition from a loading weapon. You use action when you use an action, a bonus action, or a reaction to fire it, regardless of the number of attacks you can make. There are ways around that, and then it's two-handed, which in itself is a negative property. And it has push. Now, this is the only one of these 4 weapons that if you could figure out a way, and we're going to talk about that, to get multiple attacks with a heavy crossbow, you can hit, push it 10 feet, and then if you have another attack with a particular feat, you can hit it again, and you can push it another 10 feet. So that is really, really, really important to do. I mean, that could be 20 feet of forced movement, which is awesome. So those are our weapons that we can use with push. Now let's talk about feats that we can also pair with these with the push weapon mastery and the weapon properties. Okay, here is the list of feats. Now, some of these feats that I'm going to call out are somewhat connected to this, and some of these feats are not as connected to this. But we are going to call out all the ones I think that would be generally connected and good to use with the push weapon mastery. The first one of these is Charger. So it is a general feat, which means you can't take it at 4th level. It gives a bump to our strength and dex. That's always good. I'm going to ignore the improved dash. I would never use this with this. I would never take the dash action unless I had a bonus action to do it. But usually classes that have bonus actions to dash are going to be using their bonus action for something else. The big one is the charge attack. If you move at least 10 feet in a straight line towards the target immediately before hitting it with a melee attack roll as part of the attack action, choose one of the following effects. You add a d8 to the damage roll. You can push the target up to 10 feet. Now, this is a contentious thing. You can push the target up to 10 feet, and if you did it with a pike, The pike also has the push weapon mastery. So the question is, do those stack? It doesn't say that they don't. So that is a thing we need to consider. Should talk to your DM about this. If it were at my table, I would say that this is like a more powerful charge and that, yes, it would stack. So it can't be larger than you, and then you can only use this benefit once on each of your turns. So if you had multiple attacks, you could run up, hit it with your pike, and I'm using the pike specifically with this one. You could hit it with your pike. You could push it 10 feet plus the 10 feet from the push, 10 feet from charger, 10 feet from push, 20 feet total. And you could only do that once. And then you could move up to 20 feet towards them if you only move 10 feet. And then you could hit them again and push them another 10 feet. So, my contention is, yes, you could stack charger and the push weapon mastery together. And there has been no errata on that one either. There's been no errata literally for any of the weapon masteries themselves. All right, so the next, and this is an important one, the next feat we're going to talk about is crossbow master. General feats, we can't take it till 4th level. We need to have a high dex for this one. It is going to bump our dex, which is great. So we ignore the loading property of the hand crossbow, heavy crossbow, and light crossbow, meaning we can take more than one action with it. We can fire into melee, which is fine. And that actually is pretty good. We can get right up next to something, hit it. Heavy crossbows have the push, weapon mastery. Bam, you hit it. If you have 2 attacks, bam, bam, you hit it 10 feet, and then it's done. Dual wielding, with the heavy crossbow, we would ignore this one. That's mainly for hand crossbows. So crossbow expert is a great feat for the heavy crossbow for somebody who wants to control the battlefield and force a lot of forced movement, which is, again, one of my favorite things. All right. Next feat we're going to talk about that goes along with this is Great Weapon Master. Way down here. Now, this one got nerfed quite a bit. Used to be you could take 5 off the hit and you could add 10 to the damage. That's gone. General feat, you have to be 4th level or better. Increases our strength by 1. Good. When you hit a creature with a weapon that has the heavy property, so that would be our pike, and that would be our heavy crossbow. As part of an attack. It doesn't say melee attack, it just says as part of an attack. You can cause that creature, you can cause the weapon to deal extra damage to the target. The extra damage is equal to your proficiency bonus. So it's a little bit of a bump. And then we have Hew. Immediately after you score a critical hit with a melee weapon or reduce a creature to 0, you can make 1 attack with the same weapon as a bonus action. So if we've got that pike, we can hit something. If we crit, we hit them, we can push them 10 feet, and we can immediately make an attack with our bonus action to hit something else and also push it 10 feet. So that's pretty good. And we may have another attack too. So that would be pretty good if we're using... I would get this one with the pike. I like the extra damage and I like the Hew ability. All right, the next one, and this doesn't really have a lot to do with it, but fighters still get a lot of feats. And this is mainly going to be a fighter build that I'm going to be using with the push. So we've got Mage Slayer, general feat, so we have to be 4th level. We do get a bump to our strength or dex. It is concentration breaker, so when you do damage to a creature that is concentrating, it has disadvantage on the saving throw to maintain that concentration. Again, this one could be used with the... I like the pike. Could be used with the pike. It could be used with the heavy crossbow. There is a feat that we didn't talk about yet, and that was just reminded me we need to talk about it, and that is we're going all the way back up to Crusher. And the reason we want to bring that one up is because we've got 2 weapons that have the push mastery that do bludgeoning damage. So this one, 4th level feat, we get a bump to strength or con by 1. Once per turn when you hit a creature with an attack that deals bludgeoning damage, so that's that Great Club or Warhammer, you can move it 5 feet to an unoccupied space if the target is no more than 1 size larger than you. That's actually good. So if you were large, you could do it to a huge creature. So you could push this 5 feet, but here's the thing. I would say, and you need to okay this with your DM, I would say again, because this feat is adding a little extra oomph to the attack, that it does stack, and it doesn't say that it doesn't, that it does or would stack with the push mastery. So once per turn, you could push something 15 feet instead of 5 feet. So that's a great feat. And that one is specific for push and with the Great Club and the Warhammer if you choose to use that. But the Great Club and the Warhammer don't get a lot of extra stuff. So if I were using the Great Club or the Warhammer, I would use that. If I was using the heavy crossbow or the pike, I would definitely pair that up better with Mage Slayer than the other stuff. Just to get that disadvantage on the concentration. Imagine hitting something that was concentrating with that heavy crossbow if you have the crossbow master and you're just hitting it over and over and over again and it has to make all these constitutions. And like you crit, so you could hit it with a bonus action. So, I mean, all of that is just awesome. In addition, you get the guarded mind. So if you fail an intelligence, wisdom, or charisma saving throw, you can cause yourself to succeed instead. You can use this benefit once per short or long rest, which is great. So Mage Slayer, great feat. All right, the next we're going to talk about is Piercer, and this goes along with the heavy crossbow or the pike because they both do piercing damage. So you increase your strength or your dex by 1. You get puncture once per turn when you hit a creature with an attack that deals piercing damage. You can reroll one of the attack. There's only one dice, so you can reroll the damage dice, and you got to take the new roll. And you get enhanced critical. So when you score a crit with that weapon, you can roll one additional die when determining the extra pierce damage the target takes. That's great. I love it. So that's a little extra. All right, the next one, and this goes along with the pike, is Polearm Master. So we get a bump. It's a general feat, so it's got to be 4th level or better. We get a bump to our strength or our dex. We get Pole Strike, so immediately after you take the attack action and attack with a quarterstaff spear or a weapon that has heavy and reach, which is a pike, you can use a bonus action to make a melee weapon with the opposite end of the weapon. The weapon deals bludgeoning damage, and the weapon's damage die is a d4. Now, the weapon itself, the pike, has push. So the question is, would push go along with that extra attack? Every time you attack with a push weapon, you're supposed to push it. So you could hit them. You could then, which would allow you to use your bonus. It doesn't say when you have to use your bonus action. It just says you can. So in addition, you get reactive strike. So that is also with the pike. So when you're holding a pike, you can take a reaction to make one melee attack against a creature that enters your reach, which you can push, which is great. So that's another great one too. All right, Sentinel is another great feat. It isn't necessarily centered around push or these weapons. It is something that it can be useful with this, especially with Polearm Master. You get a bump to your strength or dex. It is a general feat, so you have to be 4th level or higher. You get the Guardian, which means immediately after a creature within 5 feet of you takes a disengage action or hits a target other than you, you can make an opportunity attack with the pike, meaning that it is going to it's going to get pushed. And then Halt, when you hit a creature with an opportunity attack, the creature's speed becomes 0. So you make that opportunity attack, you push them, and their speed becomes 0, which means they're stuck. So that is a good combo with the Polearm Master and the pike itself. And the last feat that I'm going to talk about here with this, and this is one of my favorite ones that does go along with a lot of stuff because it adds a little bit of an extra, is Strike of the Giants. So you have to have a martial weapon proficiency or giant foundling background. It's easy. This is legacy stuff, so you don't have to be 4th level to get this. But you can't take it in an origin feat because it's not an origin feat. So you're going to take it at 4th level. And you get all these great things like Cloud Strike or extra fire damage or Frost Strike or the Hill Giant, which you hit it, you push it, you do extra damage, and you could knock it prone. The Stone Strike also pushes. So I would say that does stack with the push weapon mastery. And you can use this a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. And you get all those back after long rest. So those are some great feats that we can use with the push mastery. All right, the last thing I want to talk about with the push mastery is classes. And there are 4 different classes that I think are important for this particular weapon mastery and builds that go along with this. Obviously, fighter is one of them. Fighters get a lot of different stuff. They have proficiency in all the weapons that you could use with this. You could have a fighter that uses the pike. You could have a fighter that uses the warhammer or great club, or you could have a fighter that uses the heavy crossbow. And one of the great things about fighters is you'll notice they didn't take this away. Starting at 4th level, you get that ability score improvement, and you get it at 6th level, you get it at 8th level, you get it again at 12th level. So you're getting it more often than other classes are getting it, which means some of that can be used to fill in all those feats that you might need that for these feat-heavy builds. Now, which subclass would I suggest? Obviously, Battle Master. One of the other things that the fighter gets is the fighting style, so there is like heavy weapons and things like that. There is ranged weapons for the fighting, for the fighter and the fighting style as well. So Battle Master obviously is the one I like because it comes with the maneuvers and the superiority die. One of the great things about this is that there is a push attack in here, which I would say is stacking with the push weapon mastery if it was at my table. So that is a great, great thing. All right, so back to the classes. So the other class that I would say would be a good one to go with is Barbarian, because Barbarians have access to weapon mastery. So Barbarians are feat starved, so they get their feats at 4th, 8th, and 12th. So you would have to kind of be choosy with what you get with that, but they get weapon masteries at level 1. Barbarians pushing things would be great. The Path of the Berserker is a great one, I think, for this one because they get the frenzy attack, and if you're using a push weapon, then that means you get to push them. They get an extra attack. So you could be doing a bunch of different push attacks with them. So that is another great class. And after that, we've got the Paladin. Not so much for the Paladin, maybe. You know, if you want to be the kind of Paladin that wanted to push things away from the party so you could tank out, that might be the way that you go. Paladins, again, are feat starved, so they're getting their feats at 4th, 8th, and 12th levels. And then you get access to weapon masteries at level 1, just a couple, but, you know, all you really need is push. Could be a Paladin with a pike. If you're sword and board, this is not really going to work very well. But if you're a two-handed Paladin, you could do that. You also get a fighting style of your choice at 2nd level, which could go along with that pike. So I think a pike-wielding Paladin would be pretty good. I definitely like Oath of Vengeance, just because you get the Vow of Enmity, which gives you advantage. That's always a great one. All right. And the last class that I'm going to talk about with this is the Ranger. Now, Rangers, just like the other classes, are feat starved because they get their ability improvements at 4th, 8th, and 12th levels. But they do get weapon masteries at 1st level, and they do get a fighting style at 2nd level if they choose. I don't really like the Druidic Warrior very much. So you could get the ranged. I think it would be pretty cool to have a heavy crossbow ranger who you could be pushing things a lot. So this is the other class that gets it. I think the number one class I would have with this mastery is the fighter. You could just do many different builds with the fighter. So, all right, that is the push mastery and what I think about it. We gave it an A. I think there are so many ways to get multiple attacks and to keep pushing things over and over and over again. It's so important for the teamwork aspect of Dungeons and Dragons, both in 5th edition and 2024. That did not go away. The team aspect of the game is still something that happens in combat, and it allows you to really synergize with your party well to push things into very dangerous situations and take them out. All right, that is the video I got for everybody today. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I will catch everybody later.